Razorback Nation, welcome into Hogs on the Hill, episode 58. We're going to continue to break down this 2025 Arkansas Razorback football team and the position groups tonight. So, before we get started, though, we got to thank our lovely sponsors over at Razor Pigs. Looking good, never felt so fun. Razor Pigs is the Arkansas-born brand, bringing serious style to the golf course, tailgate, and everywhere in between. From high-quality polos to head-turning hats, they've got what you need to rep the natural state with pride, founded right here at home, and now run by a Razorback-loving family. Razor Pigs is where comfort meets cool, so go hog wild and shop Razor Pigs today at razorpigs.us. You can get one of those fantastic hats that Hobbs is wearing there for us, in that color and in red and black as well. So go check them out, and you can't forget about Scarlet Letter, Arkansas's very own handcrafted spiked seltzer. You can check them out today. If you're in Northwest Arkansas, you can even check out the Core Brewery Tap Room, where you can get Scarlet Letter and all its various flavors, as well as their new handcrafted spiked teas that they have on tap as well. A lot to talk about today, guys, with several different things happening with press conferences from Dave yesterday. You had the Pittman press conference today, along with Ben Sowders, head strength and conditioning coach. On top of breaking down tight ends today, so we'll go ahead and jump in with the Dave Van Horn presser. First time we've heard from him since the Major League Draft took place, and he got some of the generalized questions on what'd you think of the draft? Did you kind of expect this, or were there any surprises as far as guys signing? They asked about Parker Coyle coming back and things like that, and so. A lot of it was generalized. He didn't get into too much. There were some things certain players he said he wasn't / couldn't talk about. So talk to us a little bit about Dave's presser today, Hobbs, or yesterday, and what did you take out of it?
Yeah, I mean, he talked about Parker Cole just returning is a huge get for them because Parker Cole really felt like there was a lot of things he still hadn't accomplished at Arkansas. The Brewers drafted him and paid really all of their late round picks over the slot value. So they were planning on doing the same thing with Parker, but Parker decided to come back. So that means he turned down quite a bit of money to do so. So looking to be a big piece of our team. Dave mentioned that he could be a starter next year. Don't know. That's something that really, it's hard for him to project because, he really likes his players to show them that they not only want to be a starter, but can be a starter. So, and then if we'll stay on that top of the starters, he mentioned that Gabe Yackel will definitely, there is no maybe if, what if this guy comes in, there is definitely will be a starter. You're probably ace pitcher once again to start the season because he is that guy. And we saw that towards the end of the year. He just didn't get a good start to the season. So like Dave mentioned, he's fine. He's a guy that's just too talented. Plus it's his draft year. So he's going to get a chance to be a big time starter for us. He mentioned that, Gibbler is another guy that could be potentially starting next year as a sophomore. He's been in Japan all summer long for Team USA, really playing well. They thought he was going to be on the junior varsity USA team. Turned out he was on the big boy team that went to Japan. So good for Cole. He's been getting a lot of work in this summer. And then they talked about the draft and Maxwell and Carter being guys that they were like, they were talking about they were sweating it out with Maxwell being drafted because come late in the draft, he's not being drafted. And they said that they were on the phone with him. And he's like, hey, coach, I already got something lined out with the Yankees. And the draft wasn't even over yet. So, and Dave's sitting there saying, hey, if that's the case, why don't y'all just draft him? Why didn't y'all draft him? So, good for him. And he mentioned Dylan Carter already had a couple teams waiting to sign him. So just goes to kind of, question why didn't either one of them get drafted, especially Maxwell, a guy that I mentioned before is a 300 career hitter. So that just blows my mind there. And then show that he's got power, that he developed the power this year. But yeah, and then he mentioned the first 4 picks in the draft in the first round from us, over $10 million between the 4 players. I mean, that's incredible.
It's insane.
When you think about those guys are set, should be set for life if they manage it well. But that's just incredible. Another pitcher still Eves, the guy that jumped in the pond. Dave calls him the Bulldog. He is out there in the Cape just really pitching well. He said the team he's on loves him out of the bullpen late in the game. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's our closer next year or one of the guys that we use late in the game. Dave even said that he wouldn't have had a problem pitching Still Eves in the College World Series if we had to keep playing. That he has that much confidence in him. Talked about Souza is continuing to rehab. Probably won't be ready to throw for a while. It's probably going to even be to the point where in the fall that he's going to have to, maybe just feel the ball, kind of like how Gabe Frazier was doing. Arm wasn't ready yet, fielding the ball, but not throwing it. So it'll be interesting to see how far it gets, how far. But he said he should be ready for the season, so we'll see. He should play a big part. He talked about how his leadership is going to be huge for the team next year. And then there's another guy that a lot of people probably forgot about is Dossett, the pitcher who pitched a couple of years ago and threw gas and was really decent out of the bullpen. And he said he's been rehabbing. He said he walks in the weight room in the morning to get to his office, and he sees Dossett just going after it every day. So that's a guy that's, probably going to be big for us next year. And then yet again, we've lost an entire outfield for a third straight season. So he's talked about getting guys in, having to replace guys, getting guys that can play multiple positions. And then, like you said, Caleb, there's a lot of guys that he can't even talk about yet. The reason why he can't talk about them, I'm not really certain, but probably has something to do with, they still hadn't quite made it to campus yet. And school hasn't started, but it will soon. So hopefully we can hear more about them. And another guy, the freshman class incoming is pretty good. You could probably see an infielder playing. But another guy you're going to see that's really been tearing it up in the Cape is Brent Clark. This guy's a guy that killed it in fall ball last year, ended up redshirting, and he's just hitting like 350 in the Cape with a wooden bat, just really playing well. Dave basically told him before he went, "Hey, I think you're a really good ball player. I think you'd be great." And he said he felt like the kid really needed to hear that. And he's playing up to it.
I was about to say you hit on that, and that's one thing that I wanted to mention. Love to hearing Dave say is like telling the kid, "Hey, I know you're good. You just can play up to your potential. I know you can get there. I know you're this good of a baseball player. Go tear it up over the summer and come back, and we'll get you in this rotation."
Yeah, and he's going to be a big piece of this. He's going to play. I really believe he's an everyday player next year. He's going to be a big part of this team moving forward. Hunter Dietz is another guy that people may have thought be leaving. Maybe he's just needed a fresh start. Not so fast. He's out in the Cape Cod getting it together. So, hopefully Hunter Dietz, he's had some bad luck in his career. Hopefully he just stays injury free and he gets it together. And, hopefully we get to see a lot of him next year. He talked about Cam Kozel, who he's not just fishing, y'all. I know he's got that YouTube channel fishing and stuff. And, he could be playing third base every day next year. Yet, he said that there's no set in stone position in the field other than the first base, which will be Robinette. He did mention Reese Robinette. He's the first baseman. So that's what he expects. So, get ready to see big country every day next year. And then he mentioned that Wiggins looks good, but, he's coming off that surgery. Probably may not see him until late in the year next year. If you do see him, it's really going to be up to Wiggins and the doctors. And he expects Wiggins to maybe come back for his junior season for a full healthy year and be a high draft pick. That's what he's pretty much banking on. And then Kihio, I don't know if y'all know this, but he went out there and won the home run derby the collegiate home run derby. And, and Dave wasn't too happy about that because apparently he wasn't in the lineup come the next few days. Come down, he's got a sore wrist, and he calls the coach out there and says, hey, he's done. He can go on home.
Yeah, he had mentioned too. He was like, "Yeah, Cuillo hadn't been home since December."
Yeah,
so he's like, I called and said, "Let's go. Let's bring him and let him go home for a little bit."
Time for you to go home. Hadn't been home since Christmas, so glad he's getting to go
brother
home
and celebrate that being a high draft pick.
Exactly. So, expect for him to maybe play some outfield yet next year. He's been working on it. We'll see. And then the last thing I'll mention is the guys he mentioned. We didn't get a whole lot of big time pitchers in the portal, but they got guys they like. So, we're going to see what Matt Hobbs can work his magic. And then, another question about Gibbler being a starter. He said he's got to develop that third pitch. You can't be a starter with two pitches unless you're like Greg Maddux. So, you got to develop that third pitch to keep hitters off balance. So, that's what we got out of that.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting too, talking about Gibbler and even Coyle. If both those guys are starters, you got two lefties there. Then you could be looking at Gackle being your Sunday guy or your Saturday guy and going left, right, left. Not saying that these guys are penciled in. It's like Dave said. He's anybody has the chance to be a starter. He said they got to just go out there and show me that they can do it. But yeah, it's interesting things from Dave. As he talked about in the transfer portal, they asked him about how's your summer been? He was like, what summer are you talking about? He said, we played baseball until June.
Rest for the wicked, yeah.
Right. He said, I just call it, it's hot.
Pretty much.
Because, they get back from Omaha and they have to start recruiting the transfer portal. These freshmen trying to figure out what guys are going to do for the Major League Draft. Not really much time off there. So, I believe Dave said they'll start school August 18th. They'll start practice September 3rd. They'll go about 6 weeks till mid-October for fall ball, and then hang it up until time to start getting ready for season.
Yeah, there's very few days off. So these guys, it's baseball is that sport which most sports are year round. Don't get me wrong, you're always working out and stuff, but as far as playing, man, it's a grind. Like you think about MLB, they start in April, don't end until October. So these guys, this is all they do with their life right now. So
yeah, and they, he's talking about some other guys. He's like guys that I think he didn't say his name, but hitting around on Dylan Grego, the Ball State shortstop that signed, and Dave was like he was like I told my staff, I said we can sign him, but he's probably not making it to campus. Yeah. So that's like a lot of these guys. And they talked about, I hinted on I believe it's Malik Nua that, was transferring in as well. Went down to the Cape, is really doing well down there. Played a lot of infield this previous season where he was at. But Dave mentioned, he told him he wants to play in the outfield. That's where he's at. That's where he likes to play. Athletic, speedy guy. So, a guy that, wants to prove that, as Dave said, prove that he can play in the SEC. And, I think that's a lot of these guys. Like, think about Charles Davlon, Justin Thomas, two guys that came from a JUCO school and showed that they had what it took to hang in the SEC. Even thinking about Justin Thomas going back to the experience before junior college or at Florida Gulf Coast, being at Georgia. So he'd been around before and kind of, not a bad way, just didn't cut it then. Went and, got a lot of playing time, improved his skills, and then, back at Arkansas in the SEC, and then, started the season a little slow, but broke out and finished the season strong. And, that's why I got paid over a slot where he got drafted at.
Yeah, Justin Thomas definitely deserving, and that was the guy that was in question for them. They weren't quite sure what he was going to do, but where he was going to go, but very well deserving. And even a guy like Brent Iredale, who maybe he didn't knock the cover off the baseball in the SEC like he did in pre-SEC play, but there's a guy that got those runners in scoring position for Justin Thomas to draw those guys in to give us the lead in that ninth inning. Brent Iredale smoked that double in the gap in left field before that 2-run single by Thomas. So He did come up big. So, and Iredale's got all the tools to climb up the ladder to the MLB minor leagues as well. So it's crazy. I mean, 11 guys drafted, and I can't wait to see which guys we're going to see in the MLB, because I guarantee you we're going to see at least 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah. Several of them, each player's path through the farm system's different. Some breeze through it pretty quickly. Some
we might see this guy here in the next year.
Exactly.
So we'll see.
Wouldn't be surprised. Before you know it, we'll probably be seeing one Hagen Smith, getting that call sooner or later. But yeah, to your point, several people from this year's squad should be moving up that ladder as well. So good stuff from Dave, kind of getting insight into this summer before fall ball starts here, in a little over a month and a half in September. So it's going to be interesting to see the development that those guys have once they get back from the Cape. What development those guys that were on Team USA got that experience with Japan, like Geckel, Wiggins, Helfrich, those guys like that can bring back and talk to these younger guys and, the teammates about that experience. So it's going to be fun to see what comes and transpires out of that. But it's going to be interesting to see everything else and these other guys that Dave is talking about and, things like that. So anything you got baseball wise, Austin, you want to chime in here?
No, man, I'm just excited about Parker Cole coming in, because to be honest, I was feeling a little bit worried about who that third starter was going to be, because in my mind, you guys kind of touched on it a little bit, but I kind of had Gabe Gackel and then maybe Cole Gibbler making that 2-day spot. And I was kind of worried about who that third one was, because, you got McIlvain coming in, but he's had like control issues, and some of those other guys that are coming in who also have, some nasty stuff, but some control issues. So having Parker Cole, who has done, really well here at Arkansas, having someone come back with that much experience, and giving up quite a bit of money to do it. I mean, that's kind of easing my mind going into this next season, at least for that starting lineup. And then throughout the rest of the bullpen, I mean, they're stacked anyway, like they always are. So yeah, man, I don't have much more to add, but yeah, that's it's exciting that he's coming back, and that's more or less the takeaway that I got from this last week in baseball anyway.
Yeah, it's a big, like you said, big time add back. And even mention a guy like Tate McGuire, who's had a pretty good Cape Cod league, who kind of Cape Cod summer, who kind of fell off out of the rotation early in the year, this past season. But he's a guy that you got confidence in. That's going to be a junior coming up this season. So they're going to need that kind of leadership and for him to have a big role in the bullpen. So if we're talking about right-handed pitchers, so righty lefties, but yeah, I mean, this is still a lot to know or tell, but I'll let you kind of get into, because it's still August, and baseball is a little ways away, so we got football right around the corner. So I'll let you kind of get into the Sam Pittman press conference.
Yeah, so Sam and Ben Sowders, the strength and conditioning coach, came on and had a press conference, the first press conference of the season. Tomorrow they start fall camp. So as a football guy, I'm super excited for that. I can't wait to see some of the news that's coming out from there. One of the things that I really that stood out from Sam Pittman is he's excited about the size and the difference that the weight, speed and weight that they've made. Now the thing is, they also say that every single year. So we'll see how it actually ends up. But yeah, no, one of the things that he talked about, I think one of the first ones was Antonio Jordan, right? That's like one of the first things that they brought up, or I think it was actually a question, but it's one of the first ones they talked about. And the more and more they talk about this guy, the more and more I'm getting excited. Ben Sowders also was asked about him, but he's like 6'4". They say he doesn't look like a kid that is just coming in from high school. Talk about his work ethic a lot. I mean, like everything you want to hear about a kid from Warren, Arkansas. That's what they talked about. And then the other thing was depth. Depth was a big part of at least for Sam Pittman, big part of the press conference. They like the depth they have. Back in the SEC media days, they talked about having like 8 to 9 receivers that he thinks can play in the SEC, and then he was talking about how. Now this was a little confusing. I don't know if he was talking about like DBs overall or just safeties, like boundary strong and then like the nickelback. They said they have 5 or 6 guys that can play, that they think can play, and they're just trying to figure out who they can put where. So I'm just really excited about that too, because I'm worried about the defense. Let's just put that out there. I'm not too keen on.
You're worried about the defensive line, maybe not.
No.
You're worried about the backside too, like the linebacking core and the defensive backfield?
No, the defensive line I feel pretty decent about, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
yeah, I think they've got.
What area is your concern on the defense?
Defensive backs for sure. I mean, they had to replace pretty much the entire secondary. I mean, most of the people back there are new. I think Larry Worth is like one of the only ones that are. Like Miguel Mitchell and Larry Worth are the only ones that are really coming back with any experience, at least any experience playing for Arkansas. Do what?
They're supposed to be the safeties, yeah.
Right. But one of the ones that they also talked about is Julian Neal. How just like he's kind of like just, came up and just fit in really good and or really easy. He just fit into place, and that's pretty cool coming from a guy that's from like I forgot where he's from now. But it was one of the like an FCS school. Either way, I'm excited about him, and he plays corner, but he's like a 6'4" corner. Like he's massive to be playing corner. And they even asked him about him coming inside and playing like a nickelback, or they like to call it the hog position, but it's a nickelback. And they're like, no, or Coach Pittman was like, no, I like him at corner. So he's probably going to be one corner. And then I would have to imagine there's probably a battle between Jaheim Singletary and Selman Bridges on the other side, but I don't know yet. We'll have to wait until, football practice goes on to really know who's going to, chime up right there. But yeah, they went over the offensive line. They went over the receivers. He feels really good about the receivers, even though CC's out. Jaylen Brown was a big one they talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. But like you said, the defensive line, I really don't feel bad about the defensive line. On the inside, maybe a little bit. But first of all, you still have Cam Ball there, right? He's going to he's one of the highest graded rushing defenders in the country on the defensive line.
I really like Quincy Rhodes. I really do.
That's what I'm saying. Like everyone forgets that this dude is. I've been calling him what do you call it? I've been calling him a Landon Jackson 2.0.
Yeah. And
right. I mean, he's got the same size.
I mean, these guys are underrated a little bit. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I said that because I know most of the fan base is like, we ain't got no defensive line. We ain't gonna be able to stop no running game or whatever. So that's yet to be seen. Hard to really say what we got whenever half the team transferred. So we're gonna find out soon.
Yeah. What about you, Caleb? What'd you take from Sam Pittman's press conference?
Yeah, I think for me when watching that, I got a lot of, he kept going back to, we're bigger. we're a big football team. He said that multiple times. That's fantastic. Everything talked about, just seeing the difference. Our DBs are bigger, things like that, and kind of talking about how depth. He likes the depth we have. He talked about how, some of the developmental things. He really likes Washington at running back. He's even talked about how they're going to give KJ Jackson reps with all the ones like they did Malachi Singleton last year. It's going to be interesting to see, he keeps not harping on, but trying to reinstill. This is a bigger football team. He really likes this football team. And will the fans see what he is talking about? And that's my big thing. And, all right, we're bigger. Great. Let's show that, all right, can we do something with that size? Not just great. Our guys are bigger and stronger. All right, if that's the case, you feel great about this team, then, let's show that we can come out and do better. And so that was the one point that he talked about. You hinted on the D-line, how, we went out and got some guys. He feels good about it. He really liked the development of Quincy Rhodes, Ian Gaffard. Even he talked about, to him, the most improved guy was Danny Solly that transferred in from BYU last year. He talked about Justice Boone that came in from Florida, David Oakey, several of those guys that we'll go over when we cover the defensive line. But he said he feels really good about these guys. And not to mention Cam Ball. You can't forget about him, a guy that he said is a rare treasure nowadays, that, he spent all 5 seasons at Arkansas. Pittman didn't say it, but Sowders did. You wouldn't believe the money that Ball was offered to transfer, but he wanted to stick it out. He had that elbow surgery in the off season. They both said he played with 1.5 arms last season, and then not to mention the passing of his father over the summer. That's tough for any kid to deal with, and so I think he said Ball's ready to make this an extra special season, and he's really gonna have to step up this year. To kind of take on that defensive leadership role that kind of maybe Landon Jackson left behind as he departed for the NFL. And so he talked about hitting around Amarian Harris, that he's going to get all the opportunity in the world. It's his job to lose. As far as on the offensive line, he said Shaq McCroy looks really good. They trimmed him up a little bit, but he's still, they said he's such a small guy at 380 something. He's such a tiny guy. Is what Pittman was joking around with. But so I wouldn't be surprised to see McCroy pushing some guys on that offensive line. He talked about bringing in Robinson from Georgia Tech, that was one of the best pass rush to linemen in the portal. And then Carmona, he said he would have been the next guy if they could have brought an additional one to media days, that he would have been the next guy coming. So, and then he talked a little bit about how he feels much better with his hip surgery. That was the big thing. He said, I'm excited to get back out there and coach and not have to drive a cart around, and, actually get to walk around and, be up close and personal with these kids, help coach the offensive line some more. And, so I think it was a good presser from Pittman, but he's excited for camp to get started up tomorrow. They're going to start at 6:00 in the morning tomorrow. And then after that, it'll be at 9. He said everybody's reported. They haven't all reported yet, but he said earlier today by like 3:45, everybody should be reported to campus and ready to get fall camp kicked off.
Yeah. Also, Julian Neal's from Fresno State. I just had to look that up after I got done saying that. But yeah, no, I agree with you there.
DB come from Oklahoma.
We did, yeah. He's also a DB, but I can't remember his name off the top of my head. One of the ones that I think it was
Connie Walker.
Sam Pittman. Yeah. One of the transfers that Pittman was talking about.
I had a pick 6 with him last night on the game.
Oh. One of the incoming guys that Sam Pittman talked about was Trent Whalen. I think that's his name, from Kent State. He said that the dude's like, really coming on as of late, and he may. Well, I don't think he actually said he's going to be vying for like a number one spot, but the way that he talked about him, he's most likely going to be in the rotation for the linebackers. And then there's also Wyatt Simmons that he talked about a lot, and how this is his time to actually go out there and do something. And he also talked about him getting like 20 pounds. He was at 220 something. Now he's at like 240. So yeah, I think they're really excited about that. Yes, Caleb. I think they're really excited about that group coming back, and I think they feel really good about the linebackers in general.
Yeah, I mean, the linebacker position has the chance to be a strong group for Arkansas this year. I mean, you've got Xavier Sorey back. We know what he did last year. Surprising that he came back this year. Bradley Shaw, Steven Dix Jr., two of your guys that are going to kind of lead that group. But he also mentioned, guys like Tavian Wallace, who, we had on the show that, was a big get for Coach Williams. You got Justin Logan is returning. One guy that Pittman did mention in this press conference was Wyatt Simmons. He's a redshirt freshman. Said he's a guy that he told, hey, it's time for you to step up and do something. That he's strong, he's fast. You look through the rest of these linebackers, it's going to be you got some depth this year. Yes, Trent Whalen that you mentioned, as well as you've got some younger guys that come in as well, redshirt freshmen, guys that will be depth pieces as well. So it has a chance to be a strong group, especially like if I'm looking at the three groups on defense between the D-line, linebackers, and secondary. I like the linebacker room the most for me. And then, the other two are probably pretty close as far as you've got a lot of new pieces in there that are talented, just not a ton of experience at this level, if you will.
Yeah. So
good stuff from Pittman. Fall camp starts tomorrow. And then, before we know it, we'll be right around the corner, and we'll be taking the field against Alabama A&M and see what happens there. I did want to mention, too, Ben Sowders' press conference. One thing that was interesting to me that he hinted on, he talked about his comments about Taylor Green. If you guys caught that or if you didn't, he didn't go into too much detail, but he said, guys, you don't understand how hurt he was that last half of the season. He said those last 7 games that he played, he said if it was anybody else, they probably would not have played. He said he played through a lot. And, I mean, those first few games after Tennessee, you could tell he wasn't his normal self. But, even the bowl game, he played great, but he still played hurt. So, they said that was a big focus for them this year was kind of rehabbing him up, getting all the range of motion back, and all of those things. And not to mention he bulked up 10 pounds, and he says that he's a guy that looks like it. He's all of 6'6", and, put some more weight and muscle in that frame. So hopefully he can, stay healthy. He said he's peaking at the right time going into fall camp here. So, I think this coaching staff's excited for Taylor Green and what kind of season he can have. If some of these other pieces fall into place, your offensive line does what you expect it to. These receivers step up, and we talked about those guys last week. Who's going to be that one guy that steps up and is kind of that alpha, that number one receiver? We think it's Omega Blake, but could it come out and be somebody else? We don't know. And so, there's a lot to it, but I think this entire coaching staff is primed for Green to have a spectacular season.
Yeah, for real. We all knew that he was hurt, but the way that they kind of hit on the point, like super hard, it kind of makes me wonder how much damage was actually done to his knee at that point. Because when he got up, he could barely put any weight on it. So I'm excited to see what he can do at completely full strength year 2 under Bobby Petrino. Because even while he was hurt, he did nothing but progress throughout the season. He got better and better, especially about decision making. Everybody wants to talk about his decision making, but by the time he got to the Texas Tech, his decision making got like worlds better. There was sometimes still, though, he still had that kind of shortened clock in the back of his mind. Everyone wants to talk about how he hung on to the ball too long. I think that more or less the reason why he got in so much trouble is because he ended up taking off too soon. There was one time against Louisiana Tech where he took off, and it ended up being a touchdown because, his athleticism. But you're not going to be able to do that against Alabama and LSU and Texas is of the world. So hopefully having that offensive line that can protect him better, gets that clock back to a normal level. So I'm just excited about him in general, but especially more so now that I've listened to that Ben Sowders press conference.
Yeah, Transpoint Texan says here, concerned Green was allowed to play knowingly play hurt. At what point does the coaching staff pull a player for the player's long-term health? I mean, it's a point. If he was hurt as what Sowders was saying and he still played, part of that is, the player still wanting to play, but also you're the coaching staff. You kind of have to overrule. And that's a tough call. I get it. You're the staff and the players telling you one thing. You got the doctors telling you one thing. You're the coach. You got to make the decisions. It's an interesting kind of triangle to look at when you're talking about playing hurt because, there's different levels of hurt. It's like, oh, my arm hurts. I took a stinger. Okay. Compared to that shot he took to his knee that now we know was a long-term issue.
Here's the thing. If the trainer doesn't give you a red light, then it's up to your discretion. And most of the time they're going to leave it up to the players because the players are the only people who can know how much their body can handle, right? So the thing is, sure, it may be, a long-term health thing, but the player is also responsible for that. And as someone who went through his entire senior season with torn labrum and is still dealing with it today, I can tell you that I would not change the fact that I played that season with a torn labrum. So there's some things that matter, and there's some things that you're kind of like, hey, push through this, help your team, because in essence, that's what we love to see about this sport is that people who are hurting, who are suffering, coming together and still powering through that adversity and making a difference for their team. And that's what Green did, right? He went out there with a painful knee and he performed. People want to talk about, this play or that play. But the thing is, he put up 3,100 yards and 600 yards on the ground. And for 2/3 of the season, he was injured. That's pretty damn good. And that shows a lot of heart and it shows a lot about his character.
Yeah, this is
100%.
This is the one sport that, probably half of the players, if not more, are playing hurt or something's hurting most of the time. This is football, man. Like listen, Taylor Green is I commend him tremendously for fighting through it and being a leader and playing through it, unless he had a serious, where he's really, really hurt and needed surgery or something. That's a different story. But, I see it all the time in the NFL, man. These quarterbacks playing banged up all season long. It happens. So, and but yeah, it's one of the things where he's going to take some hits, and he's going to probably feel the same way again halfway through the season, man. I rewatched the Auburn game and kind of saw where it started to happen. He was taking shot after shot, having to scramble around and through that deep ball while he's getting destroyed on the sideline. It's part of, and then that was a ball that Broden had in his hands and missed it. So, but yeah, it's listen, the teams we got on our schedule, he's going to be taking some hits now. So get ready, buckle up.
Yeah, you talk about taking shots, and you mentioned the Auburn game. Look at Andrew Armstrong, the shot he took in that game, and then came back and continued to play and, just casually led the league in receiving yards. So, guys are going to choose to play, like Austin said. That's that athlete mentality that, like, if you don't have a coach saying, no, you're not playing, they're going to lean towards playing every time. So Transplant Texans has said, no doubt players are playing hurt, but were any of the others mentioned by Sowders? And if yes, was their injury implied to be as significant as Sowders implied? He didn't necessarily hint too much on other players being hurt. Mm-hmm. The only other one he mentioned was a little bit about Cam Ball and how he was dealing with that elbow. But other than that, no really big injury issues that he kind of talked about as far as to the extent of what Talon had and that significance. But he was, they asked him what he changed this year compared to last year, because Sowder said this has been the best offseason they've had yet. And he talked about how they kind of just hit the weight room more. Said that these guys need to be a little bit stronger. He said, yeah, they're, just small percentage points, quote unquote, slower, but these guys have more, they're stronger, but are still fast as well. Maybe not top end fast as what, they were last year per se, but he said they can run longer distances at this higher speed and things like that. So, hopefully we see that this year. Like I said, with Pittman saying we have a bigger football team, I think they said that in the DB room, our average went from, in the 180s to 190s last year to, low 200s this year as far as average weight across the board with these guys. So we're going to be able to have those level of defenders, hopefully, that, can put a little bit more oomph in those hits in the SEC this year.
We'll see about it. But I don't know. I think that going back to Transplant Texan just a little bit, there's not anyone else that he talked about being hurt, but I think that more or less he's trying to emphasize that character that I was talking about, if that makes sense. Trying to emphasize how much he wanted to be there and do that, and how much he could improve this season. I think that was more or less why he brought up the injury.
And I'll double down on that character. There's a former quarterback that wouldn't have played through an injury or wouldn't have played through a banged up problem. So I'll leave it there.
Hey, first of all, I don't remember if you remember that. That was a weird. I don't know if you remember that Texas A&M game, the one before that certain quarterback tried to jump from the 5-yard line and it fumbled all the way back to the house. The one before that, he also had a knee injury similar to Taylor Green, and I don't know if you remember that last drive. There was one play in particular where I think it was a third down. He was hit at the 4 yards before that first down marker and drove with that injured knee all the way past it. And that's actually what sealed the game for Arkansas. So I'm going to push back a little bit on that
guy. I remember the guy that was just looked lost as the deer and just regressed his whole career, even all the way through Central Florida. And just, I mean, where did that guy go? So I don't know. I don't remember that dude.
Anyways, back to the playpen, children. Let's go. Did y'all mention, one thing that Pittman did mention in his press conference, did y'all mention how he kind of hinted around on the patch for McFadden?
Yeah.
Just a little bit. One thing that stood out to me is that he said that number 5 is the most requested jersey from incoming recruits. And he said it's because they want them to play. They want that number because of the legacy that Darren McFadden left. Right. So I do like that. And here, I'm gonna let something out that I don't think I've ever told anybody. I think retiring jerseys is stupid. Completely stupid. I think I get it for Brandon Burlsworth, right? I understand that one to a little bit more of an extent because you want to immortalize him completely because the last place he ever played football was there. I'm not sure if the last person to ever wear 77 was him, but it was much closer to his death than to where they retired that jersey than it was to I think anyway to where Darren McFadden stopped playing to now. Like number 5 wasn't the last number Darren McFadden ever wore. 77 was the last number that Brandon Burlsworth ever wore. So like on that hand, I kind of get it. But with Darren McFadden, he's still alive and well. He's still out here, going to games. But I think it's a better way to honor that person, having that patch and having the person that wears that patch be one of the go-to guys on the team than to put it up in a rafter somewhere and no one ever look at it again. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like do what LSU does with number 7. They give that jersey to the guy who's the playmaker, the one who everyone sees as the best guy on the team. And even for the guys that can't legally wear that number, like Will Campbell last year, actually wore a patch that had 7 on it. So like I think doing something like that with the number 5 jersey is a much better option than retiring it.
Yeah, I see both sides of it. But, if you missed it on I believe it was the Hog Pod or something like that, they had they had McFadden on it. They had Pittman and Yurchek pop up as they were talking to him, and they broke the news to him. And you could tell that meant a lot to him. I saw a clip where they were talking to him and Houston Nutt together, and how Nutt thought he should have won the Heisman. I still stand behind that too. But I mean, it's cool to see that aspect of the number's not retired, but hey, if you're wearing number 5, you're also wearing this patch. And maybe that means a little bit more to these guys. Like you look at it, this year's roster, who's wearing number 5 this year? Cam Ball on defense and freshman Ja'Caden Ferguson at wide receiver.
Right.
So you got a guy that in Cam Ball that really embodies a guy like McFadden, a go-to player, a player that loves the state of Arkansas, has spent his entire time here. And then, think about what that could mean for Ja'Caden Ferguson. He's an incoming freshman. You're wearing number 5. You know who, even if he's from Texas, you know who number 5 was for Arkansas. That's easy, easiest thing in the world. Now you're going to have that patch on your jersey. So maybe that means that kind of inspires them a little bit to play up. You're wearing this number 5. You've got this guy's patch that was a staple for Arkansas football on your jersey. So now, does that kind of increase your motivation and inspire you to kind of up your game a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things for it. Now having that freshman wear number 5, I think that's kind of like he already chose it. That's where it's going. I think they haven't said anything officially, but if I'm correct, I think that's probably where they're going to go to it. And having someone like Cam Ball, who it just implements everything, just embodies everything that you want out of a Razorback. Having him wear that number is about as good as a pick you can have on this team this year. So, yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly there. I do think that what do you call it? Skill players, more or less, would be a better fit to have that. It just because whenever I think of Darren McFadden, I think skill players. I don't really think linemen. But
fair enough.
Same time, and the thing is, with a number like that, you can't have it on for offensive linemen. You can only have numbers 50 through 79. But like I said, they could also do some kind of patch for somebody who embodies what Darren McFadden was at Arkansas too. So I think they can go a lot of different places with it. But I do like the fact that Cam Ball gets to wear that number this year.
Yeah, 100%. It's like Transplant Technician said, Austin, I agree with you 100% on the Burlsworth jersey retirement. There's also the Burls kids as well. They help keep his memory and legacy alive and not forgotten in the rafters for years to come. He said the Burls kids get mentioned at least once a year by TV commentators, and the patch will do the same for D-Mac's legacy.
Right.
So really cool things with that and coming from the press conference in this past week. But with that, we're still going to talk about this next position group with the tight ends. And, we talked about pass catchers last week with wide receivers. Now we're going to talk about these tight ends. And this is a little bit of different room than what, you saw last year. The departure of Luke Hobbs, who's hurt for Ole Miss this year, so you won't be seeing him this year. You have Andreas Puska back this year, Paskey. And then you got some new faces that we'll talk about. And one of those that Pittman seems to hint about and likes to mention that, like, what he likes to see from him is transfer Rohan Jones. Was a junior last year from Montana State, had 30 receptions for 470 yards, 9 touchdowns. A guy that he likes his speed. He's a guy that he keeps saying can stretch the field for him at that tight end position. He said actually in spring practice that he had him run with the wide receivers group for a little bit instead of the tight ends, just because they're needing that speed and, field stretching ability from a guy like at the tight end position.
Yeah, he was telling the media that he's probably one of the guys that hit like that 20 mile per hour mark, 21 miles per hour. One of those guys that hit it the most. So, or the most consistently. So yeah, no, that's a very exciting thing to think about when you're talking about the tight end group. But one of the things that I was worried about when he came in here, one, he's coming from Montana State, so he's not coming from an FBS program, although one of the better FCS programs in the country. But he was also like 220, I think. And I think we were talking about this earlier, but that weight gain makes me feel a lot better about what we're going to get at him. I mean, you obviously got...
Well, did you notice what Ben Sowders said about that? He said they went through spring practice and Jones was like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
After going against these guys, he's like, I need to bulk up.
Yeah. He's like, this is the SEC. Okay. I kind of figured that's what would happen. I figure that's what happens with most of these guys that come from like FCS and D2 and, group of 5 to a point. But I do like that he's gained weight, even though, I mean, you still got big guys like Pasca, which we're going to talk about in a minute, but just having someone who can do both of those things, stretch the field and be a really like a legitimate pass threat, while also being able to do those chips and, hold his own whenever you have like a tight end in protection and, in the run blocking. That's something you don't really see nowadays. You either have those Brock Bowers type guys, or you have the guys that are like Pasca. You don't have those in between guys like I'm not saying Rohan Jones is Gronk or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but you don't see guys that can do both nowadays. It's kind of like one or the other. So right. I like that.
Guys that are really good blocking or really good pass catching and are okay blocking, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, what I really like about him is his size. I mean, he's just. I think that the size of these tight ends, the speed you're talking about, I think they can stay on the field, and really, really excited because we know what Petrino can do with a good tight end.
I was about to say, yeah, you read my mind there. We've seen it. When Petrino was here before. Does a guy like DJ Williams ring any bells? Chris Gregg, guys like that. So that's, he knows how to handle and coach those tight ends up. And so I'm excited to see what a guy like this is going to do. This is one of the guys that's been, I guess, talked about most, but you still got other guys on this roster that will contribute as well. We'll go on to the next guy here, Andreas Paskey, the guy that kind of Austin mentioned before, redshirt junior last season, had 3 catches for 19 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's more of your run blocking tight end that you're going to have. So I can see these guys being used in those different ways where, don't get me wrong, he can catch touchdown patches. I mean, we saw that against Mississippi State. He caught 2 of them after Luke Hobbs was hurt. And then, but, can be a run blocking guy for you. Rohan Jones is your stretch the field, kind of speedy tight end, if you will. But, I think both these guys are going to both have just as big a roles as, I don't think you're going to see it lean more one way than the other. I think you could see a lot of 2 tight end sets potentially as well. I mean, he mentioned that, Jones is a guy that you can even line up outside as well, other than, your regular tight end position. And, like we said, Bobby Petrino knows how to work, those offensive schemes and scheme up plays for tight ends. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with these two guys that are kind of opposites of each other, but still can contribute in different multifaceted ways for this football team.
Yeah, like I said, in the depth piece, like you talked about, mentioned he can catch the ball in the end zone, run block. So that's one thing that we need is end zone threat. So, I know it's against Mississippi State, but it's always good to bring somebody back on your roster that's familiar with the offense. I don't expect him to be a big time, first or second string tight end that's going on the majority of the passing routes. But he's there for the big goal line packages. Go out for that little route like he did against State a couple of times. If it's a play action pass or something like that. So, yes, it's good to have him come back.
And you also look at the size comparison between these guys. Rohan Jones, 6'3", 242. You've got Puska that line 6'6", 267. So he's got 3 inches and 20 pounds on Jones. If that doesn't scream blocking tight end to me, then like I don't know what else to tell you. Like that's the guy you want. Especially we talked about it too a few weeks ago with this offense. If you're going to have success in the red zone, which Arkansas did not have very much of last year, they had success between the 20s, but once you got instead that 20, this is a guy that you're going to need to contribute to that, on top of improved O-line play. But you have a guy like this, you get the ball, bounce it outside with one of your running backs in the red zone. This is a guy, if you're one of those running backs, you want to see in front of you running to give you some blocks. So, these guys are going to be utilized in different roles, but I'm excited to see what they're both going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the next guy you're about to talk about is my favorite one.
Yeah. Next up here, we got Jaden Platt, a guy that hadn't been talked about a ton, throughout, spring and, the summer practices, or as Pittman called them, OTAs, that we haven't heard a ton from him. Or regarding him, he was a redshirt freshman last year, transferred in from Texas A&M, had he didn't have any stats last year, disregard that, but a guy that, was a really talented recruit coming out of high school. He's a 4-star tight end by 24/7 Sports Rivals, ESPN. In high school, caught 54 passes for 900 yards, 10 touchdowns. His red shirts, his freshman year, appeared in 3 games, had 2 catches for 52 yards and a touchdown. Last year, played in 6 games. He returned 1 kick for 11 yards against McNeese State. But other than that, so he's a guy that might be one of those that, needs a fresh start. The talent is there. It didn't work out at A&M for him. Maybe he can come in this Bobby Petrino system, can kind of utilize him and kind of put him in the best position to succeed and use that talent that he has to have success.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about most potential at any of the tight ends on the roster, I mean, this kid has it all written all over him. Like you mentioned, former 4-star, needed a fresh start from Texas A&M, but he's got the size. You look at the high school numbers. He's done it before. So maybe being under Petrino, we'll get him right. And I hate to keep comparing everything to the video game, but this kid on my roster is just goes up and gets the ball. So hopefully I see him do that in real life, but he's a big old target out there. So
6'5", 265. So
yeah,
in terms of height, he's in between Andreas and Rohan, but he's right up there in the same weight class as Andreas Paskey as well.
Yeah. So, like I said, the size of this group is phenomenal. Of course, you got Jones, probably got the most speed out of all of them. But I mean, just the potential of this group is, a lot of people say we ain't got no tight end, but we've got a couple of them. So the question is, who will be the guy? So, which I think they all have the capability of making big plays for us.
Right. And we'll go on and talk more about the rest of the tight ends on the roster. That's probably the main three to, I would say, focus on for this
Right.
upcoming season. But, you still got some other guys on this roster. Jeremiah Becht is one, another one from a small school that transferred in. He was kind of one of those later transfers that towards the end of the portal after he transfers in from Chaffee College. He's 6'4", 237 junior. So Chaffee College is in Rancho Cucamonga, California. His junior college career, he had 77 catches for 851 yards, 7 touchdowns over 21 games. As a sophomore in 2024, he logged 37 receptions for 366 yards at 9.9 yards per catch and 4 touchdowns over 11 games. Was earned first team Southern California Football Association honors. So, another guy that has pass catching ability, can he elevate that to, the SEC level?
Yeah, I mean it's one of the things where you're wondering what kind of playing time he gets this year. So we'll see if he can crack the the lineup a little bit, because I know the first three we talked about is going to be the majority guys. So I'd be interested to see what kind of what he looks like when he gets on the field.
Yeah, you move over to Hudson Hendricks, a guy that isn't your prototypical tight end size type of guy. He's a freshman out of Bourne, Texas. 5'9", 232. Not your typical tight end, to say the least. I don't know if there's a typo there, but if he is 5'2", or 5'9", that's shorter than myself. So, I'm ready to go, Coach. You need me to pop in there, let me know. But he's a freshman, attended at high school, Bourne, Texas. He had 74 carries for 438 yards and 20 touchdowns while catching 17 passes for 190 yards and touchdown. Started defensively his senior year. So an interesting guy to look at on the roster as far as you look at, if it's not a typo, his stature in terms of being slotted at the tight end position.
Sounds like Arkansas Razorback already. So, oh man, 5'9". I mean, hey, look, I'm interested to see that. It sounds like a special teams kind of guy. I don't know. We'll see. There's been a lot of 5'9". I can't think of one tight end that was 5'9". I could think of like a 5'9", 5'10" quarterback. But a tight end, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Another guy to talk about, Maddox last year. Yeah, Pittman really likes. He talked about him a lot last year as a kind of gadget guy, if you will. He's 6'3", 250 out of Warren. So he's a Warren kid. Redshirt sophomore. Appeared in 13 games last season with 1 start. He was utilized primarily as a blocking tight end in goal line situations. He got his first career start during the bowl game against Texas Tech. He saw action against Missouri, was targeted once in the win over Louisiana Tech. And so a guy that Pittman likes to move around and utilize in different ways. Be interested to see, what he does this year. Does he make a step forward? Does he contribute any? Is he, we'll probably see him in goal line packages again. I wouldn't be surprised, but another one of the guys that's has added depth to this roster.
Yeah, I remember him playing against Texas Tech when we literally had nobody on the roster that hardly anybody knew who they were at that point. But yeah, I mean, it's good to have him back for another year. He knows the offense, so that's going to already help you get on the field by doing that. So I'll be interested to see how he looks this year.
Yeah. And then finally wrapping up, this tight end room and this depth position, Gavin Garrettson, freshman coming in from California, 6'7", 263. Talk about tight end size right there. That's what you think out of prototypical tight end size there. He was a 3-star prospect according to 24/7 Sports, ESPN, and On3. He was rated as the number 50 tight end in the class of 2025. As a senior, he hauled in 20 passes, 383 yards, 6 touchdowns as a senior. He also played defense as well, but he chose Arkansas over Cal, San Diego State, and others. A little note of his older brother is actually a tight end at San Diego State. So playing tight end runs in the family, I guess. But a guy that I don't know how much he's going to contribute as freshman year, has the size. Is behind some really talented guys on this roster, but does he stay, work in the system? And who knows, in a year or two, maybe he's a guy we're talking about as a key player on this offense.
Yeah, and the question is, you mentioned a year or two, does he redshirt? Who out of these guys are actually going to redshirt and be around for the next year? Because it's hard. Like you said, I mentioned this before. It's hard to really be like, yeah, he's going to redshirt. We're going to see him in a year or two. I don't know. I don't know. Could he
nowadays with the transfer portal, you redshirt a guy, they're gone.
Yeah, I mean, more than likely, except for linebacker, what's the name? Wyatt Simmons.
Yeah,
he's stuck around. So, sometimes you got guys that want to be a Razorback. So hopefully these guys will develop and so we'll see. Hopefully some guys stick around.
I was about to say, historically, running Arkansas has been called a running back but you think about it, look at all the great tight ends Arkansas has had over the years too. I mean, you think about your Hunter Henry, DJ Williams, Chris Gregg, guys like that. There's many Jeremy Sprinkle that I'm not mentioning, that throughout the years Arkansas has produced some really good tight ends, and a lot of those were under Coach Petrino. His offense, he likes to get those tight ends involved. And so, it's going to be interesting to see what this position group looks like, what the snap share looks like between these guys. Like we talked about, you're going to probably see a lot of Rohan Jones and Andreas Paskey. But other than that, I mean, maybe some Jaden Platt. It's like we said, we haven't heard a ton on him throughout, spring practice. Maybe he's made some development over the summer, pushes for some playing time, as we go throughout fall camp that's going to get started up tomorrow. And that'll be interesting to see how that development goes throughout the season. But, for the most part, Paskey, Jones are going to be the two guys that you want to kind of keep your eye on in terms of the tight end position. So, we went from having a lot of news, to this week to, didn't have a ton on Sunday to a lot today. So that's kind of just how the summer goes for us. So that's kind of we'll play it by ear situation where on Sundays we'll determine if we're going to have a show. If there's anything to really talk about, we might start doing some of these position breakdowns on Sunday, depending on as we still got a few to go through before the season's here. So we might have to start kind of doubling up on these guys twice a week.
Season feels like it's forever away. It's still 30 days away. It seems like.
Yeah, but fall camp's here, and before you know it, we're going to be like the first game Saturday and start previewing Alabama A&M. So,
wow,
yeah,
preview 70-0.
Yeah, that's gonna be one of those games where you see what the backups can do and what they look like. So,
right, it's like how many quarters is Taylor Green going to play? First half, and then maybe a couple drives in the third quarter. We'll see.
And then you get to see KJ Jackson, what he can do with his offense. So,
yes.
Maybe his dad's just on there just waiting. Maybe so. I'm guessing that's in reference to the 5'9" tight end and Hunter. Yeah, so you've got a lot of things to look at this year with this pass catching, with the wide receivers, this tight ends, a lot of unproven but talented guys on this team. I feel like we keep saying that like a broken record. There's a lot of talent on this team. They just got to prove it. You got a lot of guys that maybe had success at smaller programs or guys that are talented and, maybe it wasn't the right fit or just need a change of scenery. How many times have we seen players go from one school to the other and just something seems to click, a switch flips, like something about just being in the right position at the right spot, can really help guys unlock their true potential.
Well, not just that, that's a good point too. But when you talk about so-called guys that are big-time hits in the portal, when you don't get those specific players, it allows you to spend that money on several different other guys. So the depth piece, I do believe Sam Pittman when he says the depth is probably the best he's had yet. I do believe that because, most of this roster transferred out or got drafted, and he was able to bring in a bunch of receivers, a bunch of new offensive linemen, skilled players that we haven't really seen. Be able to keep 2 running backs, bring in 2 new ones. One new one, the other one left and came back. So, I do believe that this is going to be a little bit bigger and better. And, when you talk about size, that's huge on the defense, man. Like, they're going to have to – these corners can't be small in this league. They're going to have to knock balls down from these tall receivers. And I mean, Alabama's got 3 receivers that could go in the first round this year. Well, Ryan Williams, I don't think is draft eligible until next year, but still, like, this is not we're going to have that size. So, I really, truly believe it.
Yeah. Brady G says Antonio is going to light it up in Alabama A&M in the second half. I'm going to assume he's referring to Antonio Jordan. We talked about him a little bit last week. These guys are high on him as far as the coaching staff. He said Ben Sowders even talked about it. He mentioned that, if you just looked at him when he showed up to campus, he seems like he's 22, but he's just a freshman. So he's got the size that, he said if they can get him up to speed, he could contribute a lot this year because he's our tallest wide receiver we have. So he could be a big target and find himself in a key position if he can kind of get up to speed on the playbook. His development went well over the summer and going into fall camp.
Without a doubt, man, you can do all you can. You can do whatever, impress coaches in practice, weight room, whatever the case may be. But some guys, when you get on the field, that's when you got to, some guys are just gamers. So
right, it's like you can have a guy that practices well but doesn't play well, but then you have a guy that doesn't necessarily practice great, but he gets out there in the game and is a star. So
exactly, some guys when we talk about practice. No, but like it's for real. And football is the biggest sport with that.
Yeah,
of finding guys that actually are gamers, and you don't know until you put them in the game. So I'm interested to see this wide receiver core because you got guys that you think is going to be the guy, but you don't know. And,
we could be sitting here at the end of the season talking about some guy that we went through those receivers, but maybe we didn't think necessarily will have the potential to be a key player. That is one of our top receivers. Who knows? I mean, that's what's part of the fun of the game is seeing these guys' development from, we're projecting, all right, our starting receiver is going to be Omega Blake, Raylan Sharp, Cam Shanks is going to get worked in. All right. But then, who knows by the end of the year, we're not even talking about 2 of those guys. You never know. They're the potential on this roster is always there to leave us surprised. I mean, it's like we kind of talked about it last year as we did this same thing last year on what a big piece Broden would be. That was not the case last year. So many drop balls, key spots, like good player, but he didn't live up to that potential that we kind of thought he would have. So you have cases like that all the time, but I'm excited. The more we talk about this, the closer we get. I'm not expecting anything crazy, but it makes me feel a little bit better about the season. And it may not be all is lost. Woe is me situation with this Arkansas football team, but still a lot left to prove, though.
Yeah. I just hope people have patience and understand the schedule that we have to face
I get it if we lose a game we're not supposed to, like Arkansas State, which I don't see happening any day of the year, regardless of what's going on. But we'll see. It's the schedule is brutal as always, and I just hope we the ball rolls in our favor.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It is an interesting schedule. The way things get, started off. Alabama A&M, yeah, great. Arkansas State, Ole Miss, Memphis, Notre Dame. Like it ramps up real fast, and so, yeah. And talk about pro receivers. There was the NFL Hall of Fame game tonight. We'll quickly mention that. Isaac Tesla getting himself some playing time. He is currently the leading receiver for the Detroit Lions with 2 catches for 46 yards.
Man, that's awesome. That's so good to hear.
So, hey, I hope he does well. I've got him on one of my fantasy rosters in a dynasty league where hopefully in a year or two he can be a stud receiver for the Lions. So,
yeah, I definitely see it, and he's just a great player. So I'm glad to see that he's getting some playing time in the preseason. So I can't wait to see regular season come around. What kind of impact he's going to have for them.
Exactly. So we'll go and get wrapped up here. We're a little bit over our hour we normally go. Had a lot to talk about this week. So we're going to get wrapped up. And before we get out of here, don't forget to like and subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Go check out our all of our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the social media platforms. Hit that bell on YouTube. That way you don't miss any time we go live, whether it's our regular show or any type of breaking news situation. We're going to be here to cover the Arkansas Razorbacks for you guys. And so we're going to get wrapped up here. Everybody have a great weekend. We may or may not be back on Sunday. We'll let you guys know. Depends on, storylines, situation, things like that. But we'll wrap up here from Hobbs and myself. Everybody have a great weekend. We're going to jump off here, and we'll see you when we see you.